She could smell it before she saw it, the sweet, sick smell of death mixed with smoke from burning bodies. She was walking down cobblestone streets piled with corpses, people crying, praying, dying, and she knew this place, not from history books, from being there, from living through it, from watching everyone she loved die while she survived, and carried the guilt for 300 years, feel the heaviness in the air, not just humidity, not just heat, the weight of collective fear, of death hanging over everything. You're walking through narrow streets where sunlight barely reaches, stone buildings rising on both sides, windows shuttered, doors marked with red crosses, warning signs, stay away, death lives here. Your feet know these stones, have walked them 1,000 times, but now they're different, covered in filth, in waste, in the evidence of a city collapsing. And the smell, God, the smell, burning herbs that don't help, rotting flesh no one can bury fast enough, desperation and decay mixed into air you have to breathe anyway. Because you're still alive, still walking, still witnessing, while everyone around you is dying, and you don't know why you were spared, don't know if you're blessed or cursed. Her name is Catherine. She's 38, lives in London, works as a nurse, takes care of sick people every day. It's what she's always done, since she was young, always drawn to helping, to healing, to being there for people in their worst moments. But Catherine has a problem. She can't handle death, can't be in the room when patients die, can't say goodbye, can't process loss. And for a nurse, this is a serious issue. Death is part of the job, part of the cycle. But for Catherine, every death destroys her, sends her spiraling, makes her question everything, makes her feel like she failed, like she should have done more, like somehow it's her fault. Her colleagues don't understand. You have to develop distance, they say. You can't take every death personally. You'll burn out. But Catherine can't help it, can't create that distance, can't separate professional from personal. Every patient who dies feels like losing family, feels like a wound that won't heal, feels like carrying guilt for something she can't name. Her therapist calls it complicated grief, says Catherine is processing something deeper, something that goes beyond her current patients, but neither of them can figure out what. Catherine's never lost anyone close to her in this life. Her parents are alive, her siblings healthy. She hasn't experienced traumatic loss that would explain this reaction, but the fear is there, constant, heavy. Every time Catherine goes to work, she's terrified someone will die. Every time someone gets worse, she panics. Every time she hears a code blue, her heart races, and she wants to run. And when death comes, when a patient passes, Catherine can barely function, can barely breathe, can barely stay professional long enough to finish her shift before going home and crying for hours. It's gotten worse over the past 2 years. During the pandemic, when death was everywhere, when hospitals were overwhelmed, when Catherine had to work double shifts watching people die alone, no family allowed, no goodbyes, just Catherine holding hands with strangers as they took their last breaths. Over and over, day after day, until she couldn't do it anymore, until she had to take leave, until she almost quit nursing entirely. But something kept her there, some pull, some sense that this work matters, that being present for dying people matters, that her role, as painful as it is, serves a purpose, even though every death breaks her, even though the grief is crushing, even though she doesn't understand why this affects her so deeply. 6 months ago, something happened that changed Catherine's perspective. She was with a patient, an older woman dying of cancer, and as Catherine held her hand, the woman looked at her and said, "You were there before, in another time, when everyone was dying. You helped then to after. That's why you're here now. You're doing the same work, but it's okay to grieve. It's okay to feel it. That's what makes you good at this." Catherine had no idea what the woman meant, tried to dismiss it as delirium, but the woman's eyes were clear, focused, like she was seeing something real, something true, something Catherine couldn't see yet but needed to. After the woman died, Catherine couldn't shake those words. Another time, everyone dying, helped then too. What did that mean? Had Catherine been a healer before, in another life, during another plague, another pandemic, another time when death was everywhere? She started having dreams, vivid dreams. She's in a different city, old buildings, cobblestone streets, people dressed in medieval clothes, and they're dying, all of them. A plague sweeping through, bodies piling up, and Catherine is there, walking through it, trying to help, trying to save who she can, but failing. Watching everyone die, surviving when she shouldn't, carrying guilt that won't release. The dreams were so real, so detailed, so specific. Catherine would wake up and still smell the smoke, still feel the cobblestones under her feet, still see the faces of people she tried to save but couldn't, and the grief would hit her fresh, like it just happened, like it was yesterday instead of centuries ago. That's when Catherine knew. This wasn't just work stress. This wasn't just complicated grief about current patients. This was something older, deeper, a trauma from another lifetime, a plague she'd lived through before, deaths she'd witnessed and never processed, guilt she'd carried through multiple incarnations, all surfacing now, in her work as a nurse, in her inability to handle death, in her overwhelming grief that made no sense in this life but made perfect sense if she'd lived through mass death before. She found a regression therapist, someone who specialized in trauma from past lives, someone who could take her back, not to process current grief, but to access the original grief, the source trauma, the plague she survived, the deaths she witnessed, the guilt she never released. And now she's here, lying in a chair, eyes closed, breathing deep, about to go back to that other time, that other place, that other plague, where she walked through streets of death, where she tried to help but couldn't save them, where she survived and never understood why, and carried the weight forward into this life, where it's crushing her still. The shift is jarring. Catherine feels herself dropping, falling backward through time, through centuries, landing hard in a body that's both familiar and foreign. She's standing on a street, narrow, dark, flanked by tall stone buildings with shuttered windows. The cobblestones beneath her feet are uneven, worn smooth by centuries of footsteps, and the smell hits her, strong, overwhelming, burning herbs, rotting flesh, smoke, fear, death. She looks down at her body. She's wearing a long dress, simple brown fabric, rough, an apron over it, stained. Her hands are raw, chapped. She's been washing them over and over, trying to stay clean, trying not to get sick, trying to do what the physicians say even though they don't really know. Nobody knows. They just know people are dying, thousands of them, and nobody can stop it. Her name here is Anne. She's 24 years old, and she's a healer's assistant. Works with an old physician named Master Elias, helps him tend to the sick, brings water, changes bandages, holds hands, does what little can be done when medicine doesn't work, when prayers aren't answered, when death comes regardless of effort. Anne is walking to the physician's house. It's early morning, dawn barely breaking. She's been up all night, at the home of the Baker's family, all 6 of them sick. The bubonic plague, the Black Death, that's what they're calling it, the disease that's killing half the city. That started months ago and won't stop. That takes young and old, rich and poor, holy and sinful. No pattern, no mercy, just death, everywhere, constant. She passes Baptist 3 of them, lying in the street, waiting for the death cart, the cart that comes every morning to collect the dead, to take them to the plague pits, the mass graves outside the city walls, where hundreds of bodies are thrown together, covered with lime, buried without ceremony, without dignity, because there are too many, too fast. The normal ways of burial can't keep up. Anne tries not to look at their faces, but she knows them anyway. The cobbler, the young mother, the child from 2 streets over, all dead now, all part of the relentless tide. And Anne walks past, still alive, still healthy, still spared, for reasons she doesn't understand. She reaches Master Elias's house, knocks on the door. No answer. She knocks again. Still nothing. Her heart sinks. She tries the door. It's unlocked. She steps inside. The smell hits her immediately. She knows that smell. Death, recent death. She climbs the stairs, slow, dreading, and finds him. Master Elias, dead in his bed. The plague sores visible on his neck. The discoloration. The signs that came so fast. He was fine yesterday, teaching her, showing her how to lance boils, how to make herbal poultices, and now he's dead, like everyone else. Anne stands there, not crying, too numb for crying. This is the 14th person she's watched die this month, the 14th loss, the 14th friend, the 14th hole in the fabric of her life. At some point, grief becomes background noise, becomes the default state. becomes so constant you stop feeling it as acute pain and just carry it as weight. Heavy, crushing, but familiar. She needs to report the death, needs to mark the door, needs to move on. Because the living still need help, the Baker's family. They might still survive, probably won't, but she has to try. She marks Master Elias's door with a red cross, the sign, "Plague here, stay away," and she walks back through the streets, toward the Baker's house, passing more bodies, more signs of collapse, a woman wailing over her dead child, a priest administering last rites to a man lying in the gutter, a looter stealing from an abandoned shop. Order is breaking down, fear is turning to chaos. People don't know what to do, how to act, how to live in a world where death is so present, so constant, so unstoppable. Anne reaches the Baker's house, climbs the stairs. The family is in the main room, all 6 of them. 2 are already dead. The Baker and his oldest son, both cold, both past saving. The mother is delirious with fever. The 3 younger children are covered in sores, groaning, crying weakly. Not much time left. Anne does what she can, brings water, wipes foreheads, holds hands, whispers prayers she doesn't believe anymore. Because if God existed, if God cared, this wouldn't be happening. A loving God wouldn't let half a city die, wouldn't let children suffer like this, wouldn't create a disease this cruel, this arbitrary, this unstoppable. But she prays anyway. Because what else is there? When medicine fails, when effort fails, when everything fails, prayer is all that's left, even if it's empty, even if nobody's listening, even if it changes nothing. The mother dies by midday, the children by evening. Anne sits with the youngest, a girl, maybe 6 years old, and holds her hand as she takes her last breath, and Anne feels nothing, not sadness, not grief, not even relief that the suffering is over, just emptiness, just numbness, just the weight of 14 deaths becoming 20, 20 becoming a number she'll keep counting, until either the plague stops or she dies too. She marks the house, closes the door, walks home through streets that are quieter now, fewer people. Those who can leave have left, those who can't hide inside, hoping, praying, waiting, to see if death will pass them over, or take them next. Anne lives alone, in a small room, above a shop. The shop is closed, the owner dead, but Anne still has her room, her bed, her few possessions, and every night, she goes home, washes, changes clothes, burns the ones she wore that day, eats if she can, usually can't, and lies awake wondering why. Why is she still alive? Why hasn't she caught it? She's been exposed more than anyone, touched the sick, breathed their air, slept in rooms with them, and yet nothing. Not even symptoms, not even fever. Is she immune? Is she blessed? Is she cursed? Is God keeping her alive to witness, to serve, to suffer watching everyone else die? She doesn't know. Nobody knows. Some people survive, most don't. There's no logic, no pattern, no way to predict who lives and who dies. The scene shifts. Weeks pass. The plague continues. Anne continues working. Alone now. Master Elias gone. No other healers left. Just her. Walking through the city, helping where she can, watching death take everyone. Old friends, neighbors, children she held as babies. All gone, all buried in mass graves. All part of the unrelenting tide. She's exhausted. Not physically. Her body is fine. Still healthy. Still strong. But emotionally, spiritually, the weight is unbearable. Every day, more death, more loss, more faces that won't be there tomorrow. And Anne keeps going, keeps walking, keeps helping, because stopping means there's no one. And even though she can't save them, even though they'll die regardless, at least they don't die alone. At least someone is there. At least their last moments have some comfort, some kindness, some human connection. But the guilt is crushing. The guilt of surviving, of being healthy while everyone else is dying, of being spared when she doesn't deserve it more than anyone else. She's not holier, not better, not more worthy. She's just alive, for no reason she can understand. And every death makes the guilt heavier. Every face she couldn't save adds to the weight. One night, Anne is sitting in her room, can't sleep, can't eat, can't do anything but stare at the wall and wonder when it will end, when the plague will stop, when death will be satisfied, when life can return to something resembling normal, if it ever can. Because even if the plague stops tomorrow, The damage is done. Half the city is dead. Families destroyed. Communities shattered. Trust broken. How do you rebuild from that? How do you go back to normal after living through hell? She hears sounds outside, coughing, groaning, someone sick. She doesn't want to go, doesn't want to see another death, doesn't want to hold another hand, doesn't want to carry another face in her memory, but she goes anyway. Because that's what she does. That's who she is. Even when she doesn't want to. Even when she can't take one more loss, she goes. It's a woman, lying in an alley. Young, maybe Anne's age. Alone, abandoned. Left to die in the street because even family is afraid now. Even love doesn't overcome fear. The woman is covered in sores, fevered, delirious. Not much time. Anne kneels beside her, takes her hand. I'm here. You're not alone. The woman's eyes focus briefly. Who are you? Just someone who's still here. Someone who cares. Why? Why do you care? You don't know me. Because you're human. Because you're dying. Because nobody should die alone. The woman cries. Weak tears. I'm so scared, I know. But it will be over soon. The pain will stop, and whatever comes next, it has to be better than this. It has to be. Anne doesn't believe in afterlife, in heaven, in anything beyond this suffering, but she says it anyway, because dying people need comfort, need hope, need something to hold on to as they slip away. The woman dies an hour later. Anne closes her eyes, says a prayer to nobody, and walks back to her room, adding another face to the count, another weight to the guilt, another reason to wonder why she's still alive when so many aren't. The scene shifts one final time. Months have passed. The plague is ending. Finally, slowly, the deaths are decreasing, the survivors emerging, the city breathing again, but different, damaged, half empty, haunted by ghosts. Anne has survived, still healthy, still inexplicably spared, and the guilt is unbearable, because she's alive, walking through streets where thousands died, living in a city where half the population is gone, and she doesn't understand why. Why her? Why not the baker's daughter? Why not the young mother? Why not Master Elias? Why is Anne alive when so many better people are dead? She's standing in the city square, where they used to have markets, where people used to gather, where life used to happen. Now it's empty, quiet. A few survivors moving through Zal, all marked by loss, all carrying grief, all wondering what comes next. And Anne breaks, just breaks, falls to her knees, starts crying. For the first time since the plague started, she's cried, really cried, releasing months of held grief, months of witnessed death, months of carried guilt. It pours out of her uncontrollable loud. And she doesn't care who sees, doesn't care who hears, she just cries, for everyone, for everything, for the world that was and the world that is and the impossible task of living with the difference. And she hears a voice, not external, internal, like her soul speaking. You survived so you could remember, so you could carry their stories, so you could witness. This wasn't random, this wasn't luck, this was assignment. You were supposed to survive, supposed to see, supposed to hold this grief, because someone has to. Someone has to remember that they mattered, that they lived, that they died. Someone has to carry that forward. And that someone is you. Anne hears this, understands this, but doesn't accept it, because it's too heavy, too much, too unfair. She doesn't want to be the witness, doesn't want to carry the stories, doesn't want to survive just to remember. She wants to forget, wants to release, wants to let go of the weight that's crushing her. But she can't, because the voice is right. She's the witness, the survivor, the one who holds the memory. And this life is just the first of many where she'll play this role, where she'll be there for the dying, where she'll carry grief for those who can't, where she'll witness death and survive, over and over, until she learns how to do it without breaking, until she learns to hold the weight without being crushed, until she understands that witnessing is sacred work, that holding space for death is honor, that surviving to remember is gift, not curse. But she's not there yet, not in this life. In this life, she's broken, she's she's destroyed by what she's witnessed. And she carry that into her next life, and the next, and the next, until finally, centuries later, she'll be Catherine, and she'll have to face it, process it, heal it, release it, so she can finally do the work without being destroyed by it. Catherine opens her eyes, the therapist's office. Present time, but she's sobbing, deep, body-shaking sobs, because she remembers now, remembers Anne, remembers the plague, remembers the guilt of surviving, the weight of witnessing, the crushing grief of watching everyone die. I was there, Catherine says through tears. I survived the Black Death. I helped people die. I carried the guilt of surviving, and I never processed it, never released it. I just carried it forward, into this life, where it's destroying me. The therapist sits quietly, holding space, letting Catherine cry, letting the grief move through her, because this isn't just about one plague. This is about centuries of carried pain, centuries of unprocessed trauma, centuries of guilt for surviving when others didn't. As Catherine cries, she starts to understand. Her inability to handle death in this life isn't about her current patience. It's about Anne's patience, the faces she couldn't save, the hands she held as they died, the guilt of surviving when they didn't, all of it surfacing, all of it demanding to be processed, all of it refusing to stay buried anymore. Over the following weeks, Catherine processes the regression, talks about it, writes about it, cries about it, and slowly starts to heal, starts to forgive herself, starts to understand that surviving isn't a sin, that witnessing is sacred, that holding space for death is important work, that Anne did nothing wrong, that Catherine is doing nothing wrong, that grief is appropriate, that carrying the weight is part of the assignment. She goes back to work, but different now. When patients die, she still grieves, but not with guilt, with love, with honor, with recognition that death is part of life, that being present for it matters, that holding hands matters, that witnessing matters. She's not failing when patients die. She's succeeding, because they're not alone, because someone cares, because someone remembers. Her colleagues notice. You seem different, they say, more at peace, less destroyed by death. I remembered something, Catherine says, about why I do this work, about why it matters, about why I'm here. I'm a witness. That's my role. That's my gift. That's my sacred duty. And I'm not going to apologize for grieving. Not going to try to create distance. Because the grief is the point. The feeling is the point. The caring is the point. That's what makes me good at this. She starts helping other nurses, especially during hard deaths, especially with patients who die alone. Catherine sits with them, holds their hands, whispers comfort, and her presence matters, changes things, makes death less lonely, less scary, less cold. One day, Catherine is with a dying patient, an older man, no family, no friends, just Catherine, and as he's fading, he looks at her and says, "Thank you, for being here, for caring. You didn't have to, but you did." And that matters. And Catherine cries, but not guilty tears, grateful tears, because she understands now. This is why she survived the plague. This is why she carried the guilt forward. This is why she became a nurse, so she could be here, for this man, for every person who needs someone present when death comes. She's the witness, the holder of hands, the keeper of final moments, and that's sacred work, holy work, important work. She no longer feels cursed. She feels called to be present for death, called to honor transition, called to remind dying people they matter, that they're seen, that they're loved, even by a stranger, even at the end, especially at the end. Catherine starts teaching, helping other healthcare workers understand the importance of presence, the sacred nature of holding space for death, the gift of witnessing. Many resist, say you can't take it personally, say you have to distance, but Catherine knows better. The personal connection is the point. The feeling is the medicine. The love is the healing. One night, Catherine dreams of Anne. They're standing together, in the plague-ravaged city, but it's peaceful now, quiet, and Anne looks at Catherine and smiles. "Thank you, for finishing what I started, for learning what I couldn't, for healing what I carried, for honoring the work. You set us both free." And Catherine understands. She didn't just heal herself. She healed Anne, healed the past, healed the pattern that ran through multiple lifetimes, broke the cycle of guilt and grief that was crushing her, not by avoiding death, by embracing it, by honoring it, by being present for it, by understanding that survival isn't curse, it's responsibility, sacred responsibility. She wakes up lighter, freer, ready, ready to keep doing the work, ready to keep witnessing, ready to keep being present for death in ways that honor it instead of fearing it, because that's her gift, that's her purpose. That's what she came here to do, in this life and probably others. She's the one who stays, who witnesses, who remembers, who holds the hands, who says you're not alone, and that matters. More than anything, that matters. If death has haunted you in ways you can't explain, if grief feels heavier than this life should hold, if you're drawn to be present for dying people even though it breaks you every time, maybe you were there too. Maybe you survived when others didn't. Maybe you carried guilt for centuries until you finally understood that witnessing death is not failure. It's sacred work, and your tears are not weakness. They're proof that you still care in a world that teaches us not to. Watch the next video to continue exploring the traumas we carry from lifetimes past.